In 1991, India faced the worst economic crisis ever. With only 3 weeks worth of forex reserves left, India almost got bankrupt. There was widespread panic as India struggled to import essential goods like oil and food, pay back international loans, or even sustain the economy. With skyrocketing debt, political instability, and global uncertainties like the Gulf War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, India's future was looking dark. There was no option left. Defaulting on international obligations was inevitable. But then, something remarkable happened. A new government took office under Prime Minister P.V. Narsimha Rao, and under him, a brilliant economist named Dr. Manmohan Singh was appointed as the finance minister in the cabinet. PM Rao's decision to bring Dr. Manmohan Singh as the finance minister was a real game changer, and what Dr. Manmohan Singh did is historic.
Mr. Narsimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh, in my view, carried out a complete surgery of our economic policies. It was a paradigm shift.
Dr. Manmohan Singh's role in India's transformation cannot be overstated. His contributions have been acknowledged by the world leaders like former US President Barack Obama, who called him a man of uncommon wisdom and decency in his memoir, A Promised Land. Obama also said, whenever Singh spoke, people paid attention. University of Cambridge announced a scholarship in the name of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Unfortunately, these types of news will never be shown on our mainstream media. In the early years of independence, the focus of Indian leaders was on building a self-sufficient nation. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, believed in the model of economic development that relied heavily on state control and protectionism. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, India embraced a socialist model which led to the creation of large public sector enterprises and the regulation of private industries. The idea was to make India self-reliant, not dependent on the foreign powers for economic growth. Nehru's reluctance to open up India's economy to the world was rooted in a fear of foreign domination. After getting independence, Indian leaders were afraid of opening up the economy as foreign companies could once again exploit India's resources and labor, much like what British East India Company did. This approach led to the creation of the License Raj, a system where businesses needed number of permits to operate, from starting a factory to setting prices and production levels. While this model aimed to protect Indian industries from the foreign competition and promote self-sufficiency, it also created a maze of bureaucracy. Entrepreneurs often faced delays, inefficiencies, and corruption, which slowed down the business operations and killed innovation. As a result, India's economic growth remained sluggish, averaging around 3%, a rate often called as the Hindu rate of growth. Meanwhile, on the other side of the border, Pakistan, which had also gained independence in 1947, in the initial years was performing better than India. In 1960s, Pakistan's economy grew faster than India. At one point, Pakistan's per capita income was also higher than India's. While India was focusing on self-sufficiency and internal development, Pakistan was adopting a more open trade practice, allowing it to grow its economy through foreign aid and investment. But India's problems were not just economic. In 1947, shortly after independence, India found itself at a war with Pakistan over the Kashmir issue. And again in 1962, India went to a war with China, and just 3 years later, in 1965, another war was erupted with Pakistan. These wars put immense pressure on India's fragile economy, diverting funds that could have been used for development instead of spending on the weapons. In 1971, India fought yet another war with Pakistan, which resulted in the creation of Bangladesh. Although India emerged victorious, the economic toll was very heavy. By the 1970s, India was struggling with high inflation, slow growth, and widespread poverty. This was the image of India that the world saw, an impoverished country unable to lift its people from poverty. The BBC documentary on India, World's Most Starving Democracy, aired in 1970s, became a symbol of India's image on the global stage. The documentary portrayed the scenes of extreme poverty, slums, and starving children. It was a harsh portrayal of the economic struggles faced by the millions of Indians, and it was also an embarrassment for India at the global stage, and the government eventually had to ban the documentary. But the damage was already done. In the 1980s, it became clear that the socialist model of development was not working for India. The slow growth, combined with population explosion, made it seem like India would never be able to catch up with the rest of the world. By the time the 1990s rolled in, India was sitting on a ticking time bomb. We were on the edge of an economic disaster. By 1990, the fiscal deficit had ballooned to unsustainable levels. The License Raj had slowed down the economy. The Gulf War caused a spike in global oil prices, which hit India quite hard. India's major trading partner, the USSR, collapsed. India lost access to crucial markets and easy loans. By June 1991, India's foreign reserves were so low that Indian economy could not even survive for another 3 weeks. Drastic measures were needed, and fast. Then, Dr. Manmohan Singh stepped into the spotlight. Having previously served in the various economic advisory roles, now was given the monumental task to save our dying economy. When Dr. Manmohan Singh took charge, the situation was already so dire. India had already approached the International Monetary Fund for a bailout package. The IMF agreed to lend $2.2 billion, but with strict conditions. And so on July 24, 1991, Dr. Manmohan Singh presented his historic budget. His first step? A bold but controversial decision. India had to pledge 67 tons of gold reserves to secure a loan from the Bank of England and the Bank of Japan. This move was seen as an embarrassment for Indians by many, but it was crucial to fix the economy and buy some time. The budget of 1991 was nothing short of revolutionary. Dr. Manmohan Singh dismantled much of the license Raj, opening up the economy to the market forces. Here are some of the key reforms. Liberalization. The government reduced its control over industries. Licenses were no longer required for most businesses. Privatization. Several state-owned enterprises were opened to private investments. This helped reduce the government's burden and brought more efficiency to many industries. Globalization. Perhaps the most significant change was opening the India's economy to foreign investment. Multinational companies were now allowed to enter the Indian market, and the foreign direct investment (FDI) started to flow into the country. Devaluation of rupee. To make Indian goods more competitive on the international market, the rupee was devalued. This boosted exports and helped bring in much needed foreign exchange. Tax reforms. The tax system was overhauled to simplify rates and increase collections. This increased government revenue and reduced the fiscal deficit. The changes made in 1991 didn't just affect the policymakers and business leaders, they touched the lives of a common man. Job creation. The liberalization of the economy led to a surge in industries like the IT, telecommunications, and pharmaceuticals, creating millions of new jobs. The booming tech sector, particularly in the cities like the Bangalore, emerged as a direct result of the reforms. Prior to 1991, Indian consumers had limited options when it came to buying goods. Foreign products were either unavailable or were extremely expensive. Post-reforms, India saw a flood of foreign brands from cars to electronics, giving people more choices and a better quality product. GDP growth rate shot up to 6 to 7% following reforms, compared to 3% seen during the Licensed Raj era. This growth improved the standard of living of Indians and lifted millions of people out of poverty. A new middle class started to emerge, particularly in the urban areas with more disposable income and access to the global products. This led to a consumption boom, further fueling the economic growth. Conclusion. The legacy of 1991. The 1991 economic reforms marked the beginning of India's transition from a closed socialist-style economy to the one that embraced globalization and market dynamics. While there were challenges along the way, these reforms laid the foundation for India's economic rise in the 21st century. Today, many of the policies introduced in the 1991 still guide India's economic strategy. Thank you for watching. For more informational videos like this, please subscribe to the channel and also share it with your friends. See you in the next video.